The crack of my daughter's hand across my face echoed through the cathedral like a gunshot. 300 guests gasped as I stumbled backward, my cheek burning from the force of her slap. By the time security reached us, Emma was already screaming that I had ruined her perfect day forever. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're tuning in from. Because this is the story of how a $30 million wedding gift turned into the most humiliating moment of my 67 years and, strangely enough, the moment everything finally started to make sense. My name is Sarah Mitchell. And until 6 months ago, I thought I knew exactly who my daughter was. For 23 years I'd raised her from a broken 5-year-old into what I believed was a successful, loving adult. 23 years of bedtime stories, school plays, graduations, and late-night talks about life, love, and chasing your dreams. I should have known something was wrong when Emma refused to discuss the wedding budget. "Don't worry about money, Mom," she'd said during one of our planning sessions, waving her hand like it was nothing. "Derek's family is handling everything." Derek Blackwood, her fiancé of 8 months, came from old Virginia money. His father, James, owned a chain of luxury hotels along the East Coast, and Emma made sure I knew it from day one. Still, I wanted to contribute something meaningful. Mitchell Industries, the tech company I'd built from scratch over the past 30 years, was finally ready for the next generation. The patents alone were worth over $40 million, and I'd always planned to bring Emma into the business. The wedding seemed like the perfect opportunity. I asked her to meet me at our usual downtown coffee shop, the little place where we'd celebrated her college acceptance, her first job, and her engagement. I brought the legal documents neatly organized in a leather portfolio that had carried me through countless board meetings. "Emma, sweetheart," I said, sliding the folder across the marble table, "I wanted to give you something special for your wedding, something that will set you up for life." She opened it with mild curiosity, her perfectly manicured nails tapping the leather as she scanned the papers. I watched her expression shift from confusion to surprise, to something that looked almost like disgust. "What is this?" she asked, though I could tell she already knew. "It's a 45% ownership stake in Mitchell Industries," I explained, pride creeping into my voice. "I'm keeping 51% for operational control, but this makes you the second largest shareholder. The quarterly dividends alone will give you financial security for the rest of your life. And when I retire, I don't want it." The words came out flat and cold. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. "You don't want what?" "This." Emma pushed the portfolio back toward me with 2 fingers, as if it were contaminated. "I don't want to be tied down to some boring business I know nothing about. I don't want quarterly meetings and dividend reports and all that corporate nonsense." The cafe seemed to grow quieter. I could hear the espresso machine hissing, the low murmur of other conversations, the thud of my own heart beating too fast. "Emma, this isn't just any business," I said carefully. "It's our family's legacy. I built this company from nothing, working 18-hour days so you could have every opportunity. I appreciate that, Mom, I really do." Her voice slipped into the patronizing tone she'd perfected over the years. "But I'm not you. I'm not cut out for the business world. It's just not who I am." I leaned forward, trying to understand. "Then what do you want? How can I help you start your life with Derek?" Emma's eyes lit up, and for a moment she looked like the eager little girl I remembered. "Well, if you really want to give us a wedding gift, there is something that would mean more than stock certificates, of course, anything." $30 million, the number hit me like a physical blow. I felt my mouth drop open and had to force it closed again. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" $30 million, Emma repeated slowly, as if I were struggling with English. "In cash. Derek and I have been looking at houses in Napa Valley and we found the perfect estate. It's got vineyards, a main house, guest cottages, the works. But it's $30 million. And Derek's trust fund won't release that kind of money until he's 35. I stared at my daughter, this beautiful young woman I had loved and supported through everything, trying to process what she was asking. "Emma, that's not a wedding gift. That's more money than most people see in a lifetime, but you have it, don't you?" she pressed. "The company's worth $40 million, you said so yourself. And you've got savings, investments, the house." She waved her hand vaguely. "Besides, you're always saying you want to help me succeed. This is how you can do that." The logic was so twisted it almost made me dizzy. She didn't want the steady, long-term wealth of company ownership, but she wanted me to liquidate everything I'd worked for, to buy her a mansion. "Emma, even if I sold the company tomorrow, which I have no intention of doing, $30 million is 3/4 of everything I own, so?" Her voice hardened, sharp with entitlement. "It's not like you need it. You're almost 70, Mom. How much more money could you possibly spend?" There it was, the casual dismissal of my remaining years. The assumption that my life was basically over and my resources were up for grabs. I'd heard other elderly parents talk about adult children circling like vultures, But I never imagined it would come from Emma. I took a slow sip of coffee, the bitter taste fitting the moment. Emma, I love you more than life itself, but I can't give you 30 million in cash. It would mean dismantling everything I've built. And frankly, it's not a reasonable request. Her face shifted, first surprise, then disappointment, then something dangerously close to rage. So that's it? You won't help your own daughter because you care more about your precious company than my happiness? I'm offering you nearly half of a $40 million company. How is that not helping you? Because I told you I don't want to deal with business stuff. Her voice rose, sharp and petulant. I want to live my life, travel with Derek, maybe start a family. I can't do that if I'm stuck in board meetings and dealing with shareholders and all that stress. I almost laughed. The idea that owning stock in a profitable company was somehow more stressful than managing a $30 million estate and vineyard was so absurd it took my breath away. But Emma was deadly serious. What does Derek think about all this? I asked, genuinely curious. Emma's expression flickered, becoming more guarded. Derek agrees with me. He thinks it would be better to start fresh, without being tied down to your company. He's got his own business ideas. Something cold settled in my stomach. What kind of business ideas? Import-export stuff. He's got connections in Europe through his family, but he needs capital to get started. Emma leaned forward, her voice softening into a wheedling tone. Look, Mom, I know this is a big ask, but think about it. You'd be setting us up for life. Isn't that what every parent wants? To know their child is secure? The manipulation was so blatant it was almost impressive, almost Emma. The stock I'm offering you would generate roughly $2 million a year in dividends alone. If that's not security, I don't know what is, but I'd still be dependent on the company doing well. She shot back, her voice higher now, edging toward desperation. On you making good decisions, on the market not crashing. With the estate, we'd own something real, something tangible. Something that's ours, not connected to your business. I studied my daughter's face, searching for the little girl I'd adopted 23 years ago, the frightened 5-year-old, who had clung to me in the social worker's office, who cried herself to sleep for months until she finally believed I wouldn't send her away. That child had needed security, stability, unconditional love. This woman sitting across from me wanted something entirely different. She wanted independence from me, my values, my life's work, while demanding that I fund that independence to the tune of $30 million. I need some time to think about this, I said finally. Emma's smile bloomed, radiant and victorious. Of course. Take all the time you need. The wedding's still 2 weeks away. As I walked to my car, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted between us, and not for the better. The 2 weeks that followed were among the most miserable of my life. Emma called every day, sometimes twice, always asking if I'd made my decision about the money. She never asked how I was, never inquired about my work, my health, or anything else in my life. Every conversation revolved around the $30 million she was convinced I owed her. Finally, I spoke with my attorney, Marcus Webb, who had managed my business affairs for 15 years. His advice was characteristically blunt. Sarah, if you give her that kind of money, you'll be broke within 5 years and she'll be back asking for more. That was my attorney Marcus Webb's blunt warning. I tried confiding in my sister, Helen, who lived in Oregon and had always been Emma's favorite aunt. Helen was horrified. That's not your daughter talking, she said. That sounds like someone who's been coached on what to say by someone. We both knew who she meant. I'd only met Derek Blackwood 3 times before the wedding. He was handsome in that generic country club way, tall, blonde, perfectly dressed, with the smooth manners that come from expensive private schools, and even more expensive dental work. Emma was clearly smitten, but something about the way he looked at me always made me uneasy, like he was sizing me up, calculating my net worth. The wedding was set for Saturday afternoon at St. Bartholomew's Cathedral, followed by a lavish reception at the Fairmont Hotel. Emma wanted everything perfect and expensive. She'd spent months obsessing over flowers, photographers, musicians, menu choices. The guest list ballooned from 50 to 300, most of them Derek's family and friends. I knew maybe 30 people in the entire crowd. Friday night brought the rehearsal dinner at Derek's parents' country club. James Blackwood, Derek's father, was exactly what I expected, silver-haired, commanding, radiating the kind of confidence that comes from never doubting your own importance. His wife, Victoria, was beautiful in that high-maintenance way that requires professional help to maintain past 40. During dinner, James raised his champagne glass for a toast that made my skin crawl. To Emma, he said, who's brought such joy to our Derek's life, and to Sarah, who raised such a lovely daughter and is being so generous with her wedding gift. The way he lingered on generous told me Emma had shared details of our conversation. I managed a polite smile and nod, but inside I was seething. The assumption that I'd already agreed to hand over $30 million was breathtaking in its arrogance. After dinner, Derek pulled me aside for what he called a private conversation. We stepped onto the terrace overlooking the golf course, the evening breeze carrying the scent of jasmine from the club's gardens. He launched straight into what was clearly a rehearsed speech. Sarah, I want you to know how much Emma and I appreciate what you're doing for us. The Napa estate means so much to us. It's where we want to start our family, build our life together. Derek, I interrupted. I haven't actually agreed to anything yet. His smile faltered for just a beat. Oh, Emma seemed to think it was all settled. It's not. Silence stretched between us, broken only by the rustle of leaves. Derek's charm suddenly felt forced, like a mask that didn't quite fit. Well, he said finally, I'm sure you'll make the right decision. Emma's happiness means everything to me, and I know it means everything to you, too. There was something in his tone, soft, polite, but edged with menace, that made me look at him more closely. Of course Emma's happiness is important to me, I replied evenly. That's why I'm offering her something that will provide long-term security and growth potential. The stock thing? Derek waved a hand dismissively. Look, Sarah, I appreciate the gesture, I really do. But Emma and I have our own vision for our future. We don't want to be tied down to someone else's company, someone else's decisions, someone else's company. The casual way he dismissed 3 decades of my life's work was stunning. Derek, it's not just any company. It's highly profitable, it's growing, and it would make Emma financially independent for life. Financially dependent, you mean? His voice cooled. Dependent on quarterly reports, board meetings, and all the drama that comes with family businesses. Emma deserves better than that. Something shifted inside me, a sudden clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. What Emma deserves is a husband who supports her relationship with her mother, not someone who tries to drive a wedge between us. Derek's mask slipped completely. His smile vanished, replaced by an expression of pure calculation. Sarah, let's be honest. Emma is 28 years old. She's an adult who can make her own decisions about what she wants from life. And what she wants is independence from your controlling behavior. Controlling behavior? I couldn't keep the incredulity out of my voice. The way you've kept her tied to you emotionally and financially her whole life, he said smoothly. The guilt trips about sacrifice and gratitude. The constant reminders of how much you've done for her. Derek stepped closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Emma's told me everything, Sarah, Derek said softly, his eyes steady on mine. About how you use your generosity to manipulate her. How you make her feel guilty for wanting her own life. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. In 23 years of raising Emma, I had never once used my love as a weapon. Never made her feel guilty for growing up and becoming independent. The idea that Derek could twist my devotion into something manipulative was almost incomprehensible. That's not true, I said quietly, isn't it? He tilted his head, almost smiling. Then prove it. Give her what she's asking for and let her live her own life without strings attached. I stared at the man who was about to become my son-in-law. This stranger who thought he could rewrite the history of my relationship with my daughter. Derek, I said carefully, I think you should know something about Emma, something about her background that she might not have shared with you. His eyes narrowed. What kind of something? Emma was adopted. She came to me when she was 5 years old after being removed from an abusive home. She'd been through things no child should ever experience. I watched his face as I spoke. It took years of therapy, patience, and unconditional love to help her heal from that trauma. The idea that I would ever manipulate or control her isn't just false, it's cruel. Derek's expression didn't change. That's ancient history, Sarah. Emma's an adult now. She doesn't need to be defined by her childhood anymore. You're right, I said evenly. She doesn't, but she also doesn't need to be isolated from the people who love her. No one's isolating her, he replied smoothly. We're just asking for the financial freedom to build our own life together. Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzly, which felt ominously appropriate. I woke with a headache and a sense of impending doom I couldn't shake. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 p.m. I arrived at St. Bartholomew's Cathedral at 1:30. Wearing the navy blue dress Emma had approved months earlier. The cathedral was already nearly full. Derek's extended family and friends filling most of the pews. I took my seat in the front row on the bride's side and waited. Emma looked stunning in her wedding gown, a confection of silk and lace that had cost more than my first car. As she walked down the aisle on the arm of my brother Tom, who was giving her away in place of her late father, she looked radiant, happy, completely in love. The ceremony itself was beautiful, traditional, everything a wedding should be. Despite everything that had happened over the past 2 weeks, I found myself tearing up as they exchanged vows. This was still my daughter, the little girl I'd raised and loved, promising to spend her life with the man she had chosen. It was during the reception that everything unraveled. The cocktail hour passed without incident. I mingled with guests, accepted congratulations, and made polite small talk with Derek's relatives. Emma and Derek glowed as they posed for photographs and accepted well wishes from their friends. Dinner was served at 7. The Fairmont's ballroom glittered with white roses, crystal chandeliers, and tables set with fine china and silver. I was seated at the head table between Emma's college roommate and one of Derek's groomsmen. Then came the toasts. After the best man's speech and the maid of honor's heartfelt tribute, Emma stood. She looked breathtaking under the soft lights, her gown shimmering as the chandeliers caught every movement. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," she began, her voice carrying clearly across the ballroom. "Derek and I are so grateful for all the love and support you've shown us." She spoke for a few minutes about gratitude, new beginnings, and the importance of family standard wedding speech material. But then her tone shifted, sharper and more deliberate. "I especially want to thank my mother, Sarah Mitchell, who raised me from the time I was 5 years old." Polite applause rippled through the room. "My mother taught me so many things about life, about perseverance, about building something from nothing," Emma continued. I smiled and nodded, wondering where this was going. "She also taught me about generosity, about putting family first, about making sacrifices for the people you love." Her voice grew stronger, more confident. "Which is why I'm so excited to announce that my mother has given Derek and me the most incredible wedding gift, the down payment for our new home in Napa Valley." The applause was thunderous. 300 guests clapping and cheering for my generosity, my love, my supposed sacrifice. Except I hadn't made any sacrifice. I hadn't agreed to give them anything beyond the stock options Emma had already rejected. I sat frozen in my chair as Emma kept talking, her voice bright and cheerful as she described the Napa estate they'd be buying, thanking me again for making their dreams possible. Derek beamed beside her, playing the part of the grateful son-in-law to perfection. When Emma finally sat down, still glowing from the applause, I leaned toward her and whispered, "Emma, what are you doing? I never agreed to give you the money." She turned to me with a smile that looked sweet from a distance but was ice-cold up close. "You will, Mom," she murmured. "Because now you have to." That's when it hit me. I'd been played expertly, completely played. Emma had just announced to 300 people that I'd given her $30 million. Knowing the social pressure would make it almost impossible for me to back out in public. She'd trapped me with my own reputation, with my own desire to avoid humiliating her on her wedding day. But she'd underestimated one thing about the woman who raised her. I'd built a $40 million company from nothing. I hadn't gotten where I was by letting anyone, even my own daughter, manipulate me. I stood up. My legs trembled slightly, but my voice came out steady and clear. "Emma, sweetheart," I said, loud enough for the microphone to catch. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." The ballroom fell silent. 300 faces turned toward me, expectant. Emma's smile wavered for the briefest second, but she kept it frozen in place, probably thinking I was about to play along with her little charade. "I never agreed to give Emma and Derek $30 million, I said, my voice carrying cleanly through the sound system. What I offered my daughter was a 45% stake in Mitchell Industries, something she rejected, because she didn't want to be bothered with business responsibilities." You could have heard a pin drop. The silence was so complete I heard the faint clink of ice in a water glass 3 tables away. Emma's face shifted from radiant to horrified into seconds flat. "Mom," she hissed, her voice low but sharp, trying to stay beneath the microphones. "What are you doing?" "I'm correcting the record," I said evenly, still speaking into the mic. "I love my daughter dearly, but I will not be manipulated into bankrupting myself to fund a lifestyle I cannot afford to support." Derek stood abruptly, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "Sarah, this isn't the time or place for this conversation. Can't we discuss this privately?" "The time for private conversations ended," I replied, when my daughter chose to lie to 300 people about my generosity. I looked directly at Emma, my heart breaking at the fury burning in her eyes. "Emma, you've put me in an impossible position. You announced something that isn't true, hoping to pressure me into making it true. You're humiliating me," Emma whispered, her voice shaking with rage. "On my wedding day, in front of everyone, you humiliated yourself when you chose manipulation over honesty," I said quietly. That's when she slapped me. The crack echoed through the silent ballroom like a gunshot. My head snapped to the side from the force of it and I stumbled backward a step. Heat bloomed across my left cheek as 300 people gasped in unison. "You selfish, bitter old woman," Emma screamed, all wedding day composure gone. "All I wanted was your help starting my life with Derek, and you couldn't even do that. You'd rather keep your precious money than see your daughter happy." Security began moving toward us, but Derek grabbed her arm, trying to pull her back. "Emma, please," he begged. Let's handle this privately, but Emma was past caring about appearances. 23 years of suppressed resentment came pouring out all at once. Do you know what it was like growing up with you? She cried. Always having to be grateful. Always having to prove I was worth the sacrifice you made taking me in. Never being allowed to just be your daughter because you never let me forget I was adopted. The words struck harder than her hand. Emma, that's not true. Every time I wanted something you thought was frivolous. Every time I made a choice you didn't approve of. You gave me that look, that disappointed look that reminded me I owed you everything. Tears streaked her face, mascara running, but she didn't care. Well, I'm tired of owing you. I want to be free of your expectations, your judgments, your control. I stood there, my cheeks still burning, feeling like I'd been gutted. This wasn't my Emma speaking. It couldn't be the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. Who brought me dandelions and called them flowers. Who whispered I love you every night before I tucked her in. Derek tried to calm her, leaning in to whisper urgently in her ear. But Emma shook him off. No, Derek, I'm done pretending. I'm done being the grateful little orphan who has to earn her place in this family. Security finally reached us. Two men in black suits stepped forward, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. The wedding coordinator hovered at the edge of the room, frantically gesturing as if she could somehow piece the reception back together. Ma'am, one of the security guards said gently. We need you to come with us for a second. I thought he meant Emma, then I realized he was looking at me. I'm not the one who I started. Confusion making my voice sound smaller than I intended. The family has requested that you leave. The guard said, not unkindly but firm. We can escort you out quietly, or we can make this more complicated. Your choice, the family. Derek's family. Of course. It was their event, their venue, their rules, and they wanted the problem gone quickly and quietly. I looked around the ballroom one more time. A few faces showed shock or sympathy, but most stayed carefully neutral, unwilling to take sides in a public family meltdown. James Blackwood was already moving toward the microphone, ready to smooth things over and get the party back on track. Fine, I said, gathering what was left of my dignity. I'll go. As security escorted me out, I caught fragments of whispered conversations. Always knew there was something off about that relationship. Poor Emma. Having to deal with that. Money changes people, doesn't it? By the time I reached my car, the story was already being rewritten. I was the villain now, the controlling mother who ruined her daughter's wedding because she wouldn't hand over the financial support her child deserved. Emma was the victim, the sweet bride whose perfect day had been destroyed by a bitter old woman's selfishness. I sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, shaking from adrenaline and heartbreak. Then I drove home to my empty house and poured myself a very large glass of wine. It was 3 days before Emma finally called. I think we need to talk, she said, her voice coldly professional. No apology for the slap. No acknowledgement of the public humiliation. Just that flat, businesslike tone. I think we do, I said. We met at the same coffee shop where this entire mess had begun. Emma looked different now, harder somehow, more distant. She wore expensive casual clothes that screamed money. Derek's money, I assumed. I want you to know I've spoken to a lawyer, Emma said without preamble. About my legal rights regarding your estate. I blinked. Your legal rights? As your adopted daughter, I'm entitled to inherit your assets when you die. But there are ways you could try to cut me out of your will. And I wanted to understand my options. The casual way she discussed my death, the assumption that my primary purpose was to serve as her future inheritance was breathtaking in its callousness. Emma, I'm 67 and in perfect health. I'm not planning to die anytime soon, but you will eventually, she said evenly. And when you do, I want to make sure Derek and I are protected. Protected from what? From the consequences of your own choices? From having to actually work for a living like the rest of us? I kept my voice careful but firm. Emma, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. How long have you been planning this? Planning what? This, I said. The wedding announcement. The public pressure. The manipulation. How long have you and Derek been working on this strategy? Her mask slipped just slightly. I don't know what you mean, but I saw it in her eyes, the calculation, the rehearsed innocence. This hadn't been a spontaneous emotional outburst. It had been orchestrated, designed to corner me. Let me tell you what I think happened, I said, leaning back in my chair. Derek Blackwood isn't just some rich kid looking to buy a vineyard. He's got debts, or his family does, or there's some financial pressure that requires immediate cash flow. $30 million of immediate cash flow. Emma's face went very still. You're being paranoid, am I? I pulled out my phone and opened the notes app where I'd been documenting my research. Because I did some digging after the wedding. Very interesting digging. Did you know Derek's father's hotel chain filed for bankruptcy protection 6 months ago? Right around the time Derek started dating you, that's impossible. The hotels are doing great. The hotels are hemorrhaging money, I said, scrolling through my notes. Bad investments, over-leveraging, lawsuits from employees over wage theft. James Blackwood owes approximately $47 million to various creditors. The family's personal assets have been frozen pending the bankruptcy proceedings. Emma was staring at me now, her coffee forgotten. How did you find this out? I hired a private investigator. The same one I use for business due diligence. I set my phone down and leaned forward. Emma, Derek's family isn't rich anymore. They're broke worse than broke. They're on the verge of losing everything. That vineyard in Napa isn't some romantic dream home. It's a business investment they need to flip fast to generate cash. You're lying. I have documentation, I said calmly. Financial records, court filings, news articles from the business journals. I studied my daughter's face, searching for any sign that she'd known the truth. The question is, did Derek tell you about his family situation? Or are you finding out at the same time I am? Emma's hands trembled as she reached for her coffee cup. Derek said. He said there were some temporary cash flow issues with the business, but that everything would work out once we got the estate, once you got the estate using my money. It's not like that. What is it like, Emma? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you fell in love with a con man who saw you as a pathway to $30 million in liquid assets. Emma shot to her feet, her chair scraping across the floor. You're wrong. Derek loves me. He wouldn't. He couldn't, but I could see the doubt flickering in her eyes. The little inconsistencies that had probably been nagging her for weeks, now lining up into a terrible pattern. Emma, sit down, please. We need to talk about this. She sat, but reluctantly, perched on the edge of her chair like she might bolt at any second. How much do you really know about Derek's background? I asked gently. His education, his work history, his previous relationships? I know enough, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Do you know where he went to college? Emma hesitated. European schools mostly. His family sent him abroad for a more worldly education. Do you know the names of these schools? Another pause. Not specifically, but do you know what he did for work before he met you? Family business stuff. Managing properties, handling investments. Her voice trailed off as realization hit. For a company that was already bankrupt, Emma's face crumpled. The full weight of what I was telling her finally sinking in. Oh God, Sarah, what have I done? It was the first time she'd called me by my first name instead of Mom in over a year. I reached across the table and took her shaking hands, just like I used to when she was little and woke from nightmares. Tell me about the wedding planning, sweetheart. Who made most of the decisions? Venue, costs, guest list? Derek did, mostly. He said he wanted everything perfect for me, that I deserved the best. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. But the bills, they kept getting bigger and bigger. Every time I asked about staying within budget, he said not to worry about money because he was planning to use my money to pay for it. Emma nodded miserably. The honeymoon, too? We're supposed to leave for a month in Europe next week. First-class flights, 5-star hotels, private tours. I thought his family was paying for it. They probably promised they would, I said softly. Not knowing they'd be bankrupt by the time the bills came due, we sat in silence for a few minutes, both of us processing the magnitude of what we were facing. Emma had been played expertly by someone who had zeroed in on her deepest vulnerabilities and exploited them without mercy. The motherless little girl who had always craved security and unconditional love had been the perfect target for a charming predator who promised her everything she'd ever wanted. Sarah, Emma said finally, her voice small, I need to ask you something and please be honest with me, of course. When I was growing up, did I really act like an ungrateful brat? Did I make you feel like the sacrifices you made weren't appreciated? The question broke my heart. Emma, no, never. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. Every single day I got to be your mother was a gift. Then why did Derek say those things? About me feeling guilty all the time? About you using your generosity to manipulate me? I chose my words carefully. Because he needed to drive a wedge between us. He needed you to see me as the enemy so you'd be willing to fight me for the money. If you and I had stayed close, I might have been able to warn you about him sooner. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I said terrible things to you at the wedding. I called you selfish and bitter. I hit you in front of all those people. You were defending what you thought was your marriage. Your future, I said softly. I understand why you were angry, but I humiliated you. I made everyone think you were this horrible, controlling mother who didn't want her daughter to be happy. I squeezed her hands. Emma, we can fix this. It's not too late. How? How can we fix any of this? I smiled then, feeling a flicker of my old self returning. Emma, I didn't build a $40 million company by accident. I've dealt with con men before, though I'll admit, never one who married my daughter first. Emma looked at me with the first spark of hope I'd seen since this whole mess began. What do you mean? I mean, Derek Blackwood made one crucial mistake in his planning. What mistake? He assumed I'd be easy to manipulate because I love you. He was right about the loving you part, but wrong about everything else. I pulled out my phone again. While he was busy turning you against me, I was documenting everything, every lie, every manipulation, every piece of financial fraud. Emma, Derek signed contracts for a $30 million property purchase using my money without my consent. He booked a $100,000 honeymoon on credit cards in my name. He's been telling creditors that his new mother-in-law is providing the capital to restart the family business. I scrolled through the evidence I'd been collecting. That's wire fraud, credit fraud, and probably a dozen other federal crimes. Emma's mouth fell open. You've been investigating him this whole time. The moment he made it clear he was more interested in my bank account than my daughter's happiness. Yes, what are you going to do? I stood up, leaving money on the table for our coffee. Emma, what are we going to do? If you want to fix this, if you want to save yourself from whatever Derek was really planning, then I need you to trust me one more time. Emma stood too, her face pale but determined. What do you need me to do? I need you to go home and act normal, I said as we walked out of the coffee shop. Don't let Derek know we've talked. Don't mention anything we've discussed. Can you do that? Emma nodded, though she looked terrified. How long do I have to pretend? Not long. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock there's going to be a knock on your door. FBI Financial Crimes Unit, with warrants for Derek's arrest and seizure of all assets purchased with fraudulent funds. The FBI? Emma's voice squeaked. Sarah, how did you? I told you, Emma, I've been documenting everything. When someone commits federal crimes using forged financial documents, the FBI tends to take that seriously. I put my arm around her shoulders, the first physical contact we'd had since the slap heard round the ballroom. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to cooperate fully with their investigation. You're going to provide testimony about Derek's deception. And you're going to file for annulment based on fraud within the marriage. An annulment? Derek married you under false pretenses, using a false identity and false financial information. That makes the marriage legally void. We reached our cars, parked side by side in the lot. Emma, I need you to understand something. This is going to get ugly. Derek's going to blame you, probably claim you were part of the scheme. His family will try to destroy your reputation to save themselves. Emma's face went white. What if they succeed? They won't, because you're going to have the best legal team money can buy, and more importantly, you're going to have the truth on your side. I handed her a business card. This is Marcus Webb, my attorney. He's expecting your call tonight. He'll handle everything. What about you? What's going to happen to your reputation after all this comes out? I laughed, actually laughed for the first time in weeks. Emma, I'm 67 years old. I've built a successful company, raised a wonderful daughter, and survived more challenges than I care to count. My reputation can handle the truth. Emma was crying now. But these were different tears, relief, maybe, or just the overwhelming emotion of realizing how close she'd come to destroying her life. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry for everything I said, everything I did. I don't know how you can ever forgive me. Emma, you were manipulated by an expert, I said gently. You reacted the way any young woman in love would react when someone she trusted told her her mother was the problem. I pulled her into a hug, my daughter, my little girl who'd grown up but still needed her mom sometimes. Besides, I added, you got one thing right at the wedding. What? She asked, her voice small. You said you wanted to be free of my expectations and judgments. Well, here's your chance. After this is over, after Derek is in federal prison and you've rebuilt your life, you get to decide what kind of relationship we have going forward. No guilt, no obligation, no strings attached. Emma pulled back to look at me. What if I want the same relationship we always had? What if I want to be your daughter again? Then you'll always be my daughter, I said. That never changed. Not even when you slapped me in front of 300 people 6 months later. Emma and I were having coffee again at our usual place. Derek was serving 18 months in federal prison for wire fraud and identity theft. The Blackwood family had lost everything in bankruptcy proceedings. The vineyard had been sold at auction to pay creditors. Emma was working part-time at a nonprofit while taking business classes at night. She decided she wanted to understand Mitchell Industries. After all, wanted to be worthy of the legacy I'd offered her. I have something for you, I said. Sliding a folder across the table, Emma opened it cautiously, no doubt having developed a healthy wariness of legal documents. Her eyes widened as she read. 51%? She asked. I'm ready to retire, I said simply. You're ready to take over. Besides, you've earned it. How have I earned it? I nearly destroyed everything we had. You survived, Derek Blackwood, I said. You came back from the worst mistake of your life stronger and wiser. You chose truth over comfortable lies. I reached across and squeezed her hand. Most importantly, you chose us. You chose family. Emma was crying again, but these were happy tears. I love you, Mom. I love you too, sweetheart. Always have, always will. As we left the coffee shop that day, I thought about how much can change in 6 months. How quickly trust can be broken and how slowly it can be rebuilt. How love, real love, survives even the worst betrayals. Emma had learned that independence doesn't come from cutting yourself off from the people who love you. It comes from making your own choices, taking responsibility for your mistakes, and building something meaningful with your life. And I'd learned that sometimes the best gift you can give someone is the chance to fail spectacularly and still find their way back home. The wedding slap had been heard around the world, or at least around social media, for about a week. But the reconciliation that followed was quieter, deeper, and infinitely more valuable. Sometimes the most painful moments of our lives turn out to be the most necessary ones. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.